In the last 2 sessions I had with you, Sister White, you have helped me immensely to understand some of your statements and to know my duty with regard to the current apostasy permeating the SDA Church. However, there are some statements you wrote I feel require further clarification so that I can step forward in faith, knowing and following Yahuwah's truth. Would you allow me to ask my remaining questions? In 1893, you denounced Mr. Stanton for declaring the church to be Babylon. Then, 5 years later, in 1898, you stated the church was in the Laodicean state and the presence of God was not in her midst. Can such a grievous change in a denomination occur in just 5 years?
The counsel of Christ to the Laodicean church was being acted upon. Those who claim to believe the truth do not possess that power that God would bestow upon them if they really believed and were striving for conformity to His image. The church is in the Laodicean state. The presence of God is not in her midst.
Sister White, we know that during this time frame of 1890 to 1900, you moved to Australia. This seems like an odd time to move to the other side of the world, considering the pivotal theological dialogue taking place among the prominent SDA leaders and elders. Can you elaborate on why you made this decision?
The Lord was not in our leaving America. He did not reveal that it was His will that I should leave Battle Creek. The Lord did not plan this, but He let you all move after your own imaginings. The Lord would have had W.C. White, his mother, and her workers remain in America. We were needed at the heart of the work. And had your spiritual perception discerned the true situation, you would never have consented to the movements made. But the Lord read the hearts of all. There was so great a willingness to have us leave that the Lord permitted this thing to take place. Those who were weary of the testimonies borne were left without the persons who bore them. Our separation from Battle Creek was to let men have their own will and way, which they thought superior to the way of the Lord. It was not the Lord who devised this matter. I could not get one ray of light to leave America.
The leadership of the SDA Church gets a lot of mileage from the statement you have made wherein you say, I testify, my brothers and sisters, that the Church of Christ, enfeebled and defective as it may be, is the only object on earth on which He bestows His supreme regard. Which church were you referring to in this statement?
God has a church. It is not the great cathedral, neither is it the national establishment, neither is it the various denominations. It is the people who love God and keep His commandments. Where 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, there am I in the midst of them. Where Christ is, even among the humble few, this is Christ's church. For the presence of the High and Holy One, who inhabiteth eternity, can alone constitute a church.
Thank you so much for this qualification, which settles the matter for me completely. The church, which is the only object on earth on which He bestows His supreme regard, cannot be the SDA Church, for you have confirmed in 1898 the presence of God is not in her midst, and your instructor has confirmed in 1903 that the SDA Church was deprived of his divine presence when he verified, "How is the faithful city become an harlot? My Father's house is made a house of merchandise, a place whence the divine presence and glory have departed. It is indeed his presence which can alone constitute a church." Therefore, it is an utter falsehood by the leaders of the SDA Church to claim that their denomination is the only object on earth on which he bestows his supreme glory. Thank you again for clearing up in my mind this confusing and much misused statement.
To the end of time, the presence of the Spirit is to abide with the true church.
The leaders of the Seventh-day Adventist Church have also been using your following statement to discourage members from leaving the church. The church may appear as about to fall, but it does not fall. It remains while the sinners in Zion will be sifted out, the chaff separated from the precious wheat. The remnant, who purify their souls by obeying the truth, gather strength from the trying process, exhibiting the beauty of holiness amid the surrounding apostasy. Could you elaborate further on this statement?
Those who think that the church militant is the church triumphant make a great mistake.
From Hebrews 12:18-24, I have learned of the triumphant Church of Zion, which is the only faithful church in the universe, headquartered in heavenly Jerusalem. It is the church of angels which enjoys the presence of the Father and the Son. It is also the church of the firstborn, that is, of those humble, faithful souls who purify themselves by His enabling grace, and thus are able to join the triumphant church of heaven, whose members are written in heaven. This is the church which, in the coming conflict, may appear as about to fall but does not fall. What else can you tell us, Sister White, about this triumphant church of heaven?
The members of the church triumphant, the church in heaven, will be permitted to draw near to the members of the church militant to aid them in their necessity. The work is soon to close. The members of the church militant who have proved faithful will become the church triumphant. For we are not come unto the mount that might be touched, but ye are come unto Mount Zion, and unto the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem, and to an innumerable company of angels, to the general assembly and church of the firstborn, which are written in heaven, and to God, the judge of all, and to the spirits of just men made perfect, and to Jesus, the mediator of the new covenant, and to the blood of sprinkling that speaketh better things than that of Abel.
When will that point be when the triumphant church appears about to fall but does not fall? When will this event take place?
The people of God will then be plunged into those scenes of affliction and distress described by the prophet as the time of Jacob's trouble. Jacob's night of anguish, when he wrestled in prayer for deliverance from the hand of Esau, represents the experience of God's people in the time of trouble. Jacob's company unarmed and defenseless, seemed about to fall helpless victims of violence and slaughter.
And could you tell us what will happen to the members who remain in the once militant SDA Church and refuse to join in faith the triumphant Church of Zion in the heavenly Jerusalem?
Study the 9th chapter of Ezekiel. These words will be literally fulfilled. Yet the time is passing, and the people are asleep. They refuse to humble their souls and to be converted. Not a great while longer will the Lord bear with the people who have such great and important truths revealed to them, but who refuse to bring these truths into their individual experience. The time is short. God is calling. Will you hear? Will you receive His message? Will you be converted before it's too late? Soon, very soon, every case will be decided for eternity. The Lord reads the heart as an open book. The men who are not connected with God have done many things after the imagination of their own evil hearts. The Lord declares concerning them, "They have turned unto me their back and not the face. Though I taught them, rising up early and teaching them, yet they have not hearkened to receive instruction." We are amid the perils of the last days. The time will soon come when the prophecy of Ezekiel 9 will be fulfilled. That prophecy should be carefully studied, for it will be fulfilled to the very letter.
I know from your writings the SDA Church will repeat the history of ancient Israel and shall face the same doom. Have you ever quoted a Bible example where His faithful ones separated from ancient Israel before AD 34?
As the men of Israel witnessed the corrupt course of the priests, they thought it safer for their families not to come up to the appointed place of worship. Many went from Shiloh with their peace disturbed, their indignation aroused, until they at last determined to offer their sacrifices themselves, concluding that this would be fully as acceptable to God as to sanction in any manner the abominations practiced in the sanctuary.
Thank you, Sister White, for bringing up the example of Shiloh. This means the supposition that no one did really separate from the apostasy of ancient Israel is a falsehood promoted by the corrupt leadership of the SDA Church today. I know from Jeremiah chapter 26 that Shiloh was destroyed and became desolate. Excavations have confirmed the destruction and desolation of Shiloh around 1100 BC. This proves that Yahuwah Elohim's true followers in ancient Israel were really separating from the official temple service as far back as 1100 BC and even earlier, since Shiloh was destroyed about 1100 BC. Even more compelling reasons exist today for me to separate from the SDA Church. Why, today the SDA Church is actively working and uniting with all the fallen denominational churches of Christendom, and also with the United Nations. The Church is also submitting her schools, hospitals, and universities to worldly policies and regulations, earnestly striving to shed all that has set her apart from the rest of the fallen denominational churches in order to become accepted by these churches?
When those who are uniting with the world, yet claiming great purity, plead for union with those who have ever been the opposers of the cause of truth, we should fear and shun them as decidedly as did Nehemiah. Such counsel is prompted by the enemy of all good. It is the speech of time servers, and should be resisted as resolutely today as then. Whatever influence would tend to unsettle the faith of God's people in His guiding power should be steadfastly withstood.
Your instructor, Yahuwah's Spirit, declared the SDA Church a harlot in 1903. This declaration placed the church under probation, demanding corporate repentance so that the church can come out of this divine trial period. Here is my question, Sister White, on the possibility of the church not repenting and thus irreversibly becoming part of fallen Babylon. Was there ever a possibility in your mind that the church could neglect repentance and thus join fallen Babylon?
We must, as a people, arouse and cleanse the camp of Israel. Licentiousness, unlawful intimacy, and unholy practices are coming in among us in a large degree. We are in danger of becoming a sister to fallen Babylon, of allowing our churches to become corrupted and filled with every foul spirit, a cage for every unclean and hateful bird. And will we be clear unless we make decided movements to cure the existing evil?
Would you mind sharing with me your last testimony to the SDA Church?
I am charged to tell our people that they do not realize that the devil has device after device, and he carries them out in ways that they do not expect. Satan's agencies will invent ways to make sinners out of saints. I tell you now that when I am laid to rest, great changes will take place. I do not know when I shall be taken, and I desire to warn all against the devices of the devil. I want the people to know that I warned them fully before my death.
Did you ever consider leaving the SDA Church during your long history of ministry?
Reforms must be made, for spiritual weakness and blindness were upon the people who had been blessed with great light and precious opportunities and privileges. As reformers, they had come out of the denominational churches, but now they act a part similar to that which the churches acted. We hoped that there would not be the necessity for another coming out.
I have finally resolved in my mind the reasons why Ellen White did not separate from the SDA Church while she was alive. If alive today, Ellen White would be actively giving the "come out of her, my people" call to his people within the SDA Church. But she did not do this while still alive for the following reasons. Even though the SDA Church was declared a harlot, devoid of the divine presence in 1903 by the instructor, the church was not yet then fallen. For if she had repented of her sins, Yahuwah would again have blessed her with his divine presence. This is why Ellen White, up to her death, did not separate from the SDA Church, while it was still under probation. And Satan made sure that the leadership would not rock the boat of Adventism while Ellen White was living, and not until the last pioneer had passed away. However, after the first death of Ellen White in 1915, and with the passing away of the last pioneer, John Norton Lowborough, in 1924, the leaders of the SDA Church began to take calculated, gradual steps to convert the denomination into a mainstream church. The opening move in 1926 was to adopt Working Policy number 075, whereby the leadership of the church voted to recognize the Jesuits as a part of the divine plan for evangelization of the world. By this single traitorous act, the church closed her probation unremorsefully, and has indeed become fallen and beyond reform since that time. Subsequent enactments and other actions of the SDA Church confirmed beyond a shadow of a doubt the fallen condition into which the Church cemented herself spiritually after 1926. And this is a far cry from the repentance which should have taken place, bringing with it freedom again to her members. 1931, adoption of the Roman Catholic Trinity doctrine. 1957, the SDA Church declared oneness with the fallen Protestant denominations. We are one with our fellow Christian denominational groups in the great fundamentals of the faith once delivered to the saints. This from Questions on Doctrine, page 32. This book came right after the end of the discussion of 1955-56 with the Protestants Barnhouse and Martin. In this book, the Church changed her position on Christ's nature to that of Adam's nature before the fall, and changed her teaching on the atonement, now completed at the cross, instead of actually commencing at the cross. These compromises and changes were required by the Protestant leaders in order to categorize the Seventh-day Adventist Church as an evangelical Christian church, instead of being classified as a sect. 1974, the SDA Church officially declared to the world, Rome is no longer the beast of Revelation, with these words. Although it is true that there was a period in the life of the Seventh-day Adventist Church when the denomination took a distinctly anti-Roman Catholic viewpoint, that attitude on the Church's part was nothing more than a manifestation of widespread anti-popery among conservative Protestant denominations in the early part of this century and the latter part of the last, and which has now been consigned to the historical trash heap so far as the Seventh-day Adventist Church is concerned. 1977, having surrendered to the Protestants in 1957, the SDA Church formally surrenders to Rome. B.B. Beach has a private audience with Pope Paul VI in the Vatican and presents him with a gold medallion, confirming friendship of the SDA Church with the Vatican. 1995. During the General Conference session in the Netherlands, the Vatican flag was carried through the meeting hall in a singular fashion amidst an unusually loud ovation. 1999. Pope John Paul II is welcomed in St. Louis by the SDA pastor B.T. Rice by the following words.
Pope, Your Holiness, your historic visit to St. Louis, Missouri has served as a catalyst in the creation of this program, and it transforms your presence into a lasting legacy for our region. Today, we present to you this proclamation announcing the creation of Faith Beyond Walls. Your commitment to improving interfaith relations has fostered an environment wherein the spirit of collective faith, positively action, can thrive. In addition, we also present you with this banner, the emblem of Faith Beyond Walls. We hope and pray that it will inspire interfaith communities around the world to focus their efforts on improving health and the quality of life for all humanity. Again, we welcome you to our region.
The last testimony of Ellen White, in which she foretold great changes will take place when she is laid to rest, have indeed happened. She could not separate from the church, which was under probation while she lived, for these diabolical changes were to take place after she was laid to rest. The famed SDA historian and leader Dr. George Knight has blatantly affirmed in Ministry magazine most of the founders of Seventh-day Adventism would not be able to join the church today if they had to subscribe to the denomination's fundamental beliefs. I would not remain a member of a church so devoid of Yahuwah's divine presence and the beliefs of which could not be accepted by her founders and early members. I am thankful to Yahuwah for his distinguished guidance and for the testimonies of his Spirit, which have made my duty today with regard to my continuing membership in the SDA Church bright as the sun. I will now choose to do even as Ellen White and the pioneers would do if they were here with me, to hold closely to the truths we know and love and turn away in a direction which is totally acceptable with our Yahuwah Elohim in Messiah Yahushua.